Yeah, we will now get started. It's good to see once again after a long absence, Bill Lester. You're going to be competing this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway and the number 17 truck with DGR. Welcome back, and just talk about your thoughts coming back here into the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series and how excited you are to compete at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Well, thanks. It's good to be back. It's been a long time, a long hiatus, but the stars have aligned themselves, and I'm actually going to come back and do it in my hometown. And just don't know exactly what to expect. Obviously, I'm not used to just lining them up and racing. I'm used to some practice time and qualifying time before getting into gear, but that's how they're doing it nowadays. So I'm going to have to acquaint myself with it really fast. But as you mentioned, I'm extremely excited to be able to have this opportunity. The Atlanta area Ford dealers and Camping World and Tommy's Express Car Wash have come on board to join me, and I guess they feel it's well worth it as well. So I'm pleased by that. But the amount of attention that this has generated has been fairly overwhelming. I thought I'd probably just slip in under the radar and slip back out, but a few people have raised their hand and shown interest in the fact that I want to do this. So with that, I'm here.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to open up the floor for questions, and our first question is going to come from Alex Andreev. Go ahead with your question, Alex.
Hey, Bill. I'm curious kind of how long I guess you had been trying to get this opportunity, and sort of why come back now and return to racing? Is this something that you've wanted to do for a while now after your book, or is this something that just the opportunity came across and you were like, yeah, let's do it?
Yeah, it's more the latter. It's the opportunity has presented itself. I had not been looking to get back involved in the sport, quite honestly. I'd been very content just watching it. I've always been a fan of motorsports and been watching NASCAR races and all the other racing that's going on. My background is sports car road racing, so I've been doing an awful lot of that in terms of watching it. But, you just named the discipline in motorsports, and I typically pay attention. But no, I wrote this motivational memoir with Jonathan Ingram, and we released it on February 2nd. It's called Winning in Reverse, for those that don't know. And it basically is not an autobiography. I want to make that very clear. It's not. But it is a motivational story with a motorsports backdrop, my story in terms of how I was able to live my dream. And since we released it just recently, I thought, you know what? Why not give it a little bit of an extra boost and give it a little bit more attention and publicity by getting out there and practicing what I preach. I talk about getting out of your comfort zone, and this will truly be an example of my getting out of my comfort zone. I could very easily continue to sit on the couch and watch and do that sort of thing, but here I am. I'm going to jump back in the deep end in one of the fastest tracks on the circuit, a track that I like, though, and have fond memories of because of the fact that I made my Cup debut in 2006. So it's really just a matter, Alex, of the planets aligning and my taking advantage of an opportunity to, give a little bit more legs to my book, and again, practice what I preach.
And then, as a quick follow-up too, I mean, how critical was the sponsorship from Camping World then? Because it sounded like before you weren't fully sponsored at that point. So did this allow you to be able to actually run now?
Absolutely critical. Yes, no question about that. I am so thankful that Mark Lissimonis stepped up, and I saw the tweet where he said I'm in when I indicated my intent to race on Fox Race Hub. He obviously was watching, or somebody pulled his coattail, and he was made aware of it, and he committed. So I'm very much appreciative of the fact that he's done so. But it took all three of these partners to put it together. I mean, had not all of them come together in unison, I would have been just talking about it, not being about it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Our next question will come from Mark Garrow. Go ahead with the question, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us, Bill. I've got to say, first off, as I look at you and I remember you at the racetrack, I go like, man, this guy hasn't changed a whole lot, man. So you look pretty much the same guy as when you left. So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
How do you see the lay of land now for NASCAR? We saw a lot of upheaval in our country last year. Bubba Wallace now, solid opportunity as an African-American driver. Just how do you see the landscape changing for NASCAR in a positive direction that way?
Yeah, no, I absolutely see the landscape changing. And, due to some unfortunate events that took place last year, some, I guess, silver lining came out of it. And that is the fact that America became much more empathetic, much more willing to listen, and much more willing to recognize that there are some racial disparities, there's police brutality, there's some systematic racism that's going on, and that some, I think, smarter heads prevailed and realized that, we got to make some change. We got to treat everybody as Americans, as human beings. Stop, putting people in their own little silos and such, but, treat people on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And so Bubba was really fortunate to be able to take advantage of the platform that he had, being at the top level of the sport, to be able to say, what, NASCAR, you talk about being America's sport, well, prove it, ban the Confederate flag. See if you really going to put your money where your mouth is. And NASCAR, to their credit, did it. And I was floored. I was blown away. I was so moved that I sent an email to Steve Phelps and said, thank you. I really appreciate what you did. That was a huge statement, because when I was racing on a more consistent basis in the mid 2000s, ears were not ready to hear it. There was no platform that I had to be able to say the things that Bubba did and let them gain traction. They sunk in this time. When the media asked me before about my thoughts on the Confederate flag, I was very transparent about the fact that I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable, but I ignored it. I treated it as Southern culture. And, I just got to respect, Southerners for their culture, even though I didn't believe that that's something that we should all be rallying behind. Far be it for me to make any change. It just was not the right time. Now it became the right time, and the right decisions were made. And I'm proud of that. And I'm hoping that that is just really a stake in the ground. It's just the foundation that's being laid for more change, more equality, just more everybody enjoying the sport of NASCAR, and there's so much to enjoy about this sport. It's amazing that I've taken groups of Black folks to the racetrack, and they're like, have trepidation and concern. And it's like, really, are we safe? Can we do this? And I said, look, you're with me. You're going to be fine. You're going to enjoy it. And by and large, to a man, after that event or those events, folks come back to me and say, Bill, that was a phenomenal experience. I'm a NASCAR fan. Let me know the next time you're going to a race and all that kind of stuff. So TV does a good job, but it doesn't do it justice. I mean, you can't basically explain or show what it's like to have, 40 plus cars going by you at 200 miles an hour, blowing your hat off and stuff. You know what it's like, Mark. But, once folks experience it, they're hooked. I used to say there are lots of closet Black NASCAR fans or just people of color. But when they realized it wasn't an inviting environment, they stayed home, But now, since NASCAR really is, I believe, trying to roll out the red carpet, I don't know what all their plans are. I hope they have some real tangible, measurable plans that they're going to show that they're making, achievement and progress. But I believe that things will change once we're open, as far as the COVID situation and people can come back to the track. I really believe that it will start to change, and I'm optimistic that will be the case.
My follow-up question is, back when you were in NASCAR, it always seems to me there was like two types of groups. In the garage, nothing really matters. The color of your skin doesn't matter. It's how fast can you go, or can you help me get my car go faster? And that's all that counts. And that the issues were always sort of outside the garage. Did you, or at least that's what it seemed like to me. Is that what it is to you? And you obviously see that improvement.
Yeah, Mark, that's a very accurate assessment. My concern and trepidation and anxiety was always getting into the racetrack, especially like a place like Martinsville, when with the truck series, you would park the haulers up on the hill and then you'd have to walk down to the track. And man, I can tell you, I remember many a time where my pace was quickened because I was trying to get to the track as fast as I could, because I would see, conversation stop and fingers point. And, it was clear that, I was somebody who was on people's radar. But once I was in the garage, I always felt that I was part of the garage area, that I had earned the respect of the garage, and that the competitors, my fellow competitors and what have you, they knew that I deserved to be there. I could handle myself, and I wasn't any kind of, danger on the track. And, I've had pole positions, I've led races, it was, I think, clear to everybody that I deserved to be there. Of course, I didn't come from the same background that they did, so they didn't know anything about, could I drive, could I do anything? I didn't grow up on dirt, I didn't grow up on a short track and all that stuff, but they saw what I could do, and I felt comfortable once I was inside the garage.
Thank you. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Our next question will come from Michael Shelton. Go ahead with the question, Michael.
Thank you very much. Well, you talked about NASCAR trying to create now a more inclusive environment for fans, but I just wondered, what stride, obviously Bubba Wallace, now driving for Michael Jordan, but how do you feel about the strides, if any, that NASCAR has made in trying to get more minorities involved in the sport in general, this, as drivers, pit crew members, or even in the front office?
No, I think that there's been a lot of progress made. I'll tell you, when I was racing, full time in the mid 2000s, obviously I was the only one behind the wheel. And then I only remember one other guy as a jack man who was out there with me. And, he was working for Ultra Motorsports. And I guess that was Mark Smith, Jim Smith. And yeah, now when I see the garage and I see the pit crews and I see the color that's out there, as well as the gender, it's just relieving to me to see how far NASCAR has come. It was desolate when I was there. And from, then to now, it's come so far. Can it continue to go further? Absolutely. But I'm, very pleased by what I see so far. And I just think it's the tip of the iceberg. I think folks should be in the position based on their qualifications, but everybody should have an equal opportunity to throw their name in the hat.
Thank you. Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Our next question will come from Dustin Long. Go ahead with the question, Dustin.
Thank you. Bill, it's interesting what you were kind of been talking about in the sense of you're one generation, and you described what you saw and you experienced in racing. Bubba Wallace is the next generation, and you talk about how he's had a little more of this platform. He wasn't as outspoken until last year and got the platform and has really used it. I'm curious, as you look to the next generation, and certainly things probably aren't going to happen as quick as everybody would like to see. So the next generation will probably still have to carry some things in this direction. What will be needed out of the next generation of young Black drivers, young minority drivers, or what kind of advice would you give them in the sense of, based off of what you've seen in your experiences, what you've seen through Bubba, to carry this forward so this becomes more of a complete cycle, or more of a complete, it gets to an end point where this isn't a discussion point?
Yeah, I understand what you're asking, Dustin. And it really circles back to two things: exposure and opportunity. You have to be exposed to it at a very young age to be able to have the desire to aspire to it. And so I was fortunate in the sense that my father took me to my first year just shy of 8 years old, even though they didn't put me in a go-kart or quarter midget or anything like that. Bubba was very fortunate because, he started at a very, very young age. Motorsports typically isn't very accessible to those of color, that from the standpoint of, it being something that we do in our community, right? We typically rally around more stick and ball athletics, right? Or the music industry, things that we consider to be cool, pop, and hot, So motorsports is an outlier. And one of the major reasons is because we don't see more of those that look like us, right? We tend to rally amongst each other that look like us, who we can identify with. And so when I was very young, again, watching like ABC's Wide World of Sports in the late 60s, and I would see the Talladega 500, Southern 500, Darlington 500, and I would just see a sea of, white folks and Confederate flags. That was a huge turnoff to me. And so for young Black youth or youth of color, they have to see more athletes that look like them in this sport, right? They need to see more Bubba Wallaces, or Bubba Wallace having more success. It's going to come. I believe honestly that it's going to come with that program, but folks are expecting way too much too soon. It's not going to happen overnight. You got to form the chemistry, you got to form the camaraderie, you got to form all the things that are necessary to win, all the parts and pieces, all the human stuff, et cetera, and so on. So people just need to temper it down a little bit and realize that it's coming, but it's going to take a minute. But as soon as somebody like Bubba starts winning, and more folks from, you know, the Black community start seeing that and realizing that's something that they can do because they see that, they have that exposure, then that'll be something they start trying to do. And then the next thing comes in, which is opportunity. You have to have the opportunity to be able to take it part of it and take advantage of it. And with that, with motorsports, it is so ungodly expensive, as you know, it's extremely difficult. I mean, a kid who's in his single digit years going for a national karting championship, their family could spend 6 figures, right? How many black families are out there ready to stroke a 6-figure check each year for their kid to win karting championships, you know, and then be school, you know, independently, you know, homeschool as opposed to going to school. And then, you know, there's no guarantee that their kid's going to want to continue to do that, right? They might go, okay, well, you just spent $200,000 on me for a couple of years, but I don't want to go racing anymore. I want to do something else. Well, that could shatter a family, right? But there are a lot of families where that's no big deal. You know, they're very well positioned and it's not that big of a risk. And it's what they do. It's what their families used to. It's generational. In the Black community, racing is typically not generational as far as NASCAR is concerned. There's a whole lot more Black folks in the drag racing realm than there are in, you know, the NASCAR realm. But it really comes down to, Dustin, 2 things: exposure and opportunity. You've got to be able to do it at a very young age, and you got to have a level playing field by which you compete. If you get those sorts of things, that next generation can hopefully be successful. But, you know, they can't start early enough and they can't have enough resources. That's all there is to it.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Our next question will come from Matt Weaver. Go ahead with the question, Matt.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Bill, for taking time this afternoon. You had kind of touched base on it earlier, but I'm curious for more information on what the timeline was and what the thought process and consideration on doing this now. Had you had the itch a couple of years ago and it just wasn't the right time or the right set of circumstances? What all had to go into the blender to make March 2021 the time to do it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. And the fact is, I really had no itch to scratch. I really didn't. I was content not racing. You know, every once in a while, I would kind of go and scratch the competitive juice itch by like indoor karting or maybe outdoor karting or something like that. But just, you know, never had any real desire to come back on a, you know, full-time professional platform like, you know, the NASCAR Truck Series. But, you know, as I just realized that this was a great opportunity to help give more legs to my book, I thought this was a great scenario. It was suggested to me, and I was thinking to myself, you know, there might be something to that. And, you know, I've always kind of wondered in the back of my head what it's going to be like to get back behind the wheel of a NASCAR vehicle after not being behind the wheel of one for 14 years and then doing it at 60 years of age, right? I mean, I'm no spring chicken, but, you know, I think I keep myself in pretty good shape. And, you know, I just don't, my wife will tell you, I don't act my age. I'm not sure if I ever will. But it just seemed, again, like the planets had aligned, and that with the support that was forthcoming, perfect opportunity, Matt. And, you know, sometimes I think I must be crazy, but by the same token, I still love racing. You know, I still have a passion for it. If I didn't have a passion for it, I wouldn't be doing this. I don't have anything to prove to anybody, you know, except myself. This is why I'm doing it. I'm proving it to myself that I can still do it. And, you know, giving, again, some more longevity and boost to my memoir, which I think, you know, people can gain a lot from if they take the time to actually sit down and read it.
And kind of a follow-up, it's probably a premature follow-up, but without having been on the track and seeing how it goes, is this going to be the last time we see you? Is this kind of like the retirement race, or could we see you maybe one more time after Atlanta too?
Yeah, another, you know, tremendous question that I don't have the answer to this time because I don't know. I need to find out how I feel, you know, behind the wheel. Do I still love it like I remember I loved it? Or is it something that's like, okay, I did it. It was cool, but I have no more, you know, burning desire. The flame is extinguished. I don't know. And I am just as excited and encouraged to find out what the answer to that question is as you are. I mean, it's going to be interesting to never have practice or qualifying before starting a race. And then once that green flag falls, you know, we got stage racing. I've never done a stage race before. That's going to be something totally new to me. You know, I'm working with a crew chief I've never worked with before, a spotter that I haven't worked with before. There's so many things that make this such a, you know, a significant challenge that, you know, I sometimes take a step back and pause and go, you've bitten off a whole lot here. You know, let's hope you can chew it. We'll find out.
Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
Our next question will come from Luis Torres. Go ahead with the question, Luis.
Thank you, man. Hey, Bill. I'm glad
Hi.
you're here for this occasion. So I know it's been 15 years since you ran the Cup race for Bill Davis, but before you made the jump to Bill Davis, I wanted to know kind of how gratifying over time you were for Bobby Hamilton that essentially gave you that full-time opportunity to prove your worth on the NASCAR circuit. Because I know when you made that Cup debut, it was also the same time period when Bobby was battling with what ultimately lost his life for with cancer.
Yeah, no, I mean, a tremendous tragedy. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Bobby, you know, believed in me from the very beginning. From the very first time Dodge conducted what I call the gong show, or the audition, where they determined who was going to drive the number 8 Dodge Ram for Bobby Hamilton Racing in Dodge. I'll never forget how at the end of 2000, for the 2001 season, he pulled me aside and he said, Bill, tell me what your salary requirements are. And I said, why is that? He said, because you're going to be racing my truck next year. And I mean, I was elated, over the moon. I thought my ship had come in. I thought that all the hard work and the sacrifice and all that had paid off, and that I was going to become a full-time professional race car driver. And then no more than 2 weeks later, he called me up and he said, Bill, I got some bad news for you. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Bobby? And he said, well, you know, Dodge is putting the money behind this program. And at the end of the day, they have the final say. And so they want to go a different direction. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, they're going to go with Willie T. And he's going to be able to drive this truck. And what I want you to do, however, is I want you to stay close to me. And I'm like, oh, really? Why is that? And he goes, well, I want to give you an opportunity to develop, to groom yourself, to have me help groom you, to get you ready, because I believe you're going to have another chance. And sure enough, at the end of the 2001 year, they had the gong show again. And in 2002, for that year, and 2003, I got to race the number 8 Ram. And it was because Bobby believed in me. And so I'm very appreciative to this day that he took the chance. He didn't have to do that. You know, he pretty much did this out of his own pocket and gave me this opportunity. And, you know, while not everything is, you know, roses and you know, daffodils or whatever with regard to Bobby and my experience there, I cannot take away the fact that he gave me a chance that he didn't have to give me. And it means the world to me, because had I not gotten that ride with Dodge, I may not have ever had a NASCAR career.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question will come from Davey Segal. Go ahead with your question, Davey.
Hey, Bill, thanks for taking some time today. Just curious about your relationship with Bubba and how it compares now to how it was before the events of the last year transpired, if anything different.
Sure. No, I mean, when I saw Bubba coming up through the ranks, you know, through K&N and all that kind of stuff, I mean, he was just like a little kid. I mean, when I saw him, I was like, you know, this guy is, you know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and happy-go-lucky, doesn't have a care in the world, and, you know, running around on a skateboard with band board shoes and stuff like that. I was like, okay, you know, so for him to grow into his skin and become the man he has become is extremely gratifying to me. I mean, he has taken the bull by the horns. He has owned, you know, his identity and his, you know, being who he is, and, you know, become a voice, to become a force. I'm very pleased. We, you know, don't really talk that much, but we text back and forth, and he knows how supportive I am of him. And he's been supportive of me. He provided a blurb for my memoir, for my book. You know, he took the time to do that because he thought it was that important. So we've been very supportive of each other. Whenever he would come to Atlanta Motor Speedway, I would make it a point to come, you know, and see him and spend some time with him, because I knew he was wrestling with things. I know what that pressure is like when everybody's watching you and you know, want to perform, and sometimes you got your hands kind of tied in terms of what you can and can't do, and how hard or how hard you can't push, you know, that sort of thing. So, I mean, you know, the whole deal that he was suffering from with regard to the depression and all that sort of thing, I can see that. I can see how that could happen, because you got so many eyes watching you and critiquing you and waiting for you to make a misstep. And, you know, I mean, it's just, it's oppressive. And so, you know, I can remember a time or two where I've just seen him and just put my arm around him and said, man, you're doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a fantastic job. Don't change a thing. Keep being you. So that's how I feel about it.
And I saw you tweeted a congratulatory message to Kyle Larson after he won. Curious if you've had any conversations with him over the past year and what you've thought about his actions since the incident about a year ago.
I've had no interaction with Kyle. You know, I was extremely disappointed by, you know, the misstep that he made, and he knows better. And, you know, he was obviously very apologetic about it, as he should have been. You know, for somebody, especially with his background, you know, uniquely being, you know, Japanese American, he knows what words mean and how they can hurt and, you know, demean people. So he obviously did not mean anything, I believe, egregious about it. You know, it was just a slip of the tongue, and he has made amends. He's gone through the training that he needed so that, you know, he appreciates the gravity of his actions and what he says. And I'm glad he got a second chance. I never wanted that to be the end of his racing career. However, I will say that I'm surprised he came back. As good as he is on, you know, dirt and with sprint cars and midgets and all that kind of stuff, I figured he was like, forget NASCAR. You know, I'm going to continue to just beat everybody up every week, maybe twice a week, and forget about this NASCAR hierarchy BS. But no, that's not it at all. He is a real racer. He wants to be at, you know, the top level of motorsport in this country, which is NASCAR. And, you know, he paid his dues, and I'm glad he's back. Congrats. My congratulations to him were sincere.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Our next question will come from Stephen Toronto. Go ahead with your question, Stephen.
Bill, on the subject of Bobby Hamilton, one of the elements of his race team was that I believe he did have a diversity program with, you know, you, Willie T. I think he had a couple female drivers as well. Deborah Renshaw, I know, drove for him. In that regard, how ahead of his time do you feel like Bobby and his race team were in that category?
Ahead of their time. I would say that Dodge was ahead of its time, to be honest with you. Dodge selected Bobby to execute the program, but it was Dodge wherewithal that created that program and made that opportunity a reality. They were the ones that put that roughly $3.5 million a year out there so that other corporations that preach diversity and inclusion could put their money where their mouth was. You know, a lot of companies were talking about, you know, D&I, but when it came to making a significant contribution or step in the right direction or commitment, a lot of them turned tail and ran. I mean, Dodge put that platform out there so that other companies could jump on board and partner with Dodge so that, you know, Dodge didn't have to, you know, bear the whole burden of that financial, you know, commitment. And nobody, to Dodge's astonishment, Bobby Hamilton's and mine, came to the fore. I mean, it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, it's like they paid for the whole thing effectively. All you got to do is stick your, you know, your decals on there and talk about how, you know, diverse you are. I can only recall basically Strauss Discount Auto, some small auto parts chain up in Northeast, coming on board as a sponsor of mine, in addition to Dodge. Except for my personal service relationship with Honey Nut Cheerios, thank goodness that they came on board and they saw the opportunity that I presented. But yeah, you know, the way Bobby, I believe, saw it, and I can't speak for Bobby because Bobby's not here. I wish Bobby could speak for himself. But the way I saw it is that Bobby looked at it as an opportunity to build his brand, to build his racing team. And so that's what he did. Did he really, from what I saw, lead diversity and inclusion discussions and training? No, I never saw that. The fact of the matter is when I came to the team, a whole bunch of the guys on the team were fairly leery of me. And it was a cultural, awakening for them to have a black man in the garage area and, racing their trucks. Was I, completely embraced by everybody there? No, there were some, kind of, I think, sneers and like, okay, well, we'll put up with this guy, whatever. But you know what? I understand that because it's something that they weren't used to. I was different, right? So it was up to me. It was incumbent upon me to try to make the guys at BHR comfortable with me. And I went above and beyond to try to do that, whether it was like going to Cracker Barrel, to have lunch. I mean, Cracker Barrel, I've never been to a Cracker Barrel before I came to the Southeast. And when I ate a Cracker Barrel, I couldn't see what the rage was about. I was like, okay, it's all right. But, really, and Crystal hamburgers. I'm like, that's a whole bunch of bun. Where's the meat? But in any event, it was like, it's their culture. And I was good with that. I did everything I could to be a part of the family and for them to feel comfortable around me. And, but there were episodes, and I talk about this in my memoir, Winning in Reverse, where I had to course correct on a number of occasions when the N-word was used. And I said, that's not acceptable. I'm right here. And, they would say some jokes with the N-word in it. And they go, oh, Bill, no offense, no offense. I'm like, no, that's offensive. So when you ask me about them being leaders in diversity and inclusion, I find Dodge to have been the leaders in diversity and inclusion. And Bobby Hamilton looking at a great opportunity to build his team and his brand, which he did. And I cannot fault him for that because I took advantage of the opportunity that was presented to me. And I grabbed it by both hands. But it was a situation where it was a learning curve for them. So let's leave it at that.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks for clearing that up. It's been 20 years, so some of my memory was a bit fuzzy, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question will come from Mitchell Brewer. Go ahead with the question, Mitchell.
Bill, I'm just curious on where the connection to David Gilliland Racing came from, and if you've had a chance to talk with any of your teammates ahead of this weekend.
Yeah, so the connection with DGR came as a result of one of my old crew chiefs when I was racing back on a more consistent basis in the mid-2000s. Doug George was a crew chief of mine when I was racing with Billy Ballou in 2007. And I said, Doug, I got this crazy idea of coming back to race. What's the landscape like? Would I be able to have an opportunity to race in good equipment? Can you basically be my boots on the ground? Can you tell me where the opportunities are? And sure enough, the good guy Doug he did exactly that. He kind of knocked on a few doors for me because I don't have any relationships in the garage area anymore. I know virtually nobody there. Okay, so Doug has been good enough to go and ring a few people and say, hey, there's an opportunity that might be out there. Is that something you want to maybe consider? And lo and behold, DGR came back and said, yeah, we'll entertain it. And one thing led to another. We had conversations and we were able to put a program together.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our final question will come from Antoine Breskev. Go ahead with the question, Antoine.
Thanks, Matt. Good afternoon, Bill. It's been quite a while since you've been behind the steering wheel of a NASCAR truck. What differences do you expect in current trucks comparing to those you've driven?
What I've noticed just by watching is that with these new motors, I guess the Ilmor motor, they're nothing like what I was used to when I left the sport. I mean, when we were turning the motors, we were spinning them to like as high at one point as 88, 8,900 RPM. And then they brought in this gear rule and that backed them down to about 85, 86. But I mean, I see these things droning around at 7,000 RPM and I'm like going, wow, that's sure is low. But from what I'm told, they're very torquey. And, you actually have to drive these motors now with a lot of momentum behind you. They just don't pick right back up like they did back when all the manufacturers were producing their own separate engines. So that's going to obviously be an adjustment for me. I'm not sure what that feels like, but I'm going to obviously find out here in short order. I'm under the impression that the bodies create a bit more downforce now. So hopefully you can lean on them in the corners a bit more. But, what does the tire do now? What's the profile like? I have absolutely no idea. And, full disclosure, I'm heading to DGR tomorrow so that I can spend some time with both my crew chief and David Gilliland to get some, insights from them in terms of what I should expect. I've admired David's career for quite a long time with that when he was racing in Cup, and he's got a ton of experience, which I hope to try to gain some from. But you know, again, this is going to be a whole new drive for me, a whole new you know, format in terms of how we go racing, which is right off the bat. And you know, I got a lot to learn in a very short period of time. I think the fact that it's stage racing is probably going to be a blessing for me, because it gives me the opportunity to kind of see what I have and to work with what I have and hopefully make things better if they need to be, or whatever. But you know, it's going to be a lot of sensory overload coming at me all at once. So we'll see what happens.